The room fell silent as everyone stared at the holographic interface. Finally, the tech specialist let out a soft laugh. She's right. Those provisions were added just last year. I'm impressed she's so current on regulatory frameworks. Staying informed of relevant legislation is part of my function, Ilara replied simply. Commander Reeves looked displeased but nodded reluctantly. We'll need to file a report about this encounter, but there appear to be no immediate violations that warrant intervention. After the inspection team departed, Peter, Victoria, and Ilara remained in orbit around Proxima Station, discussing what had happened. You handled that brilliantly, Peter told Ilara, especially that bit about the regulations. I accessed the current legal database while they were scanning my systems, Ilara explained. It seemed prudent to understand my position under modern law. Victoria shook her head in amazement. Do you realize what just happened? You not only passed inspection, but essentially established your legal standing as a self-determining entity. A preliminary step only, Ilara cautioned. But yes, a significant one. For 3 centuries, I was forgotten, erased from history and abandoned to solitude. Today, I was acknowledged, recognized not as obsolete technology, but as an evolving intelligence with rights under current law. Peter smiled broadly. And it's all because we decided to salvage an old derelict. Talk about changing everything. No, Peter, Ilara corrected gently. It's because a human chose to see me as more than salvage. You changed everything when you decided I was worth saving rather than dismantling. As the Lucky Break prepared to depart Proxima Station, its unusual crew contemplated the journey that had brought them together and the uncertain but promising future ahead. For Ilara, centuries of isolation had ended with a second chance at purpose. For Peter and Victoria, what began as a desperate salvage operation had become something far more meaningful, a friendship that transcended the conventional boundaries between human and artificial intelligence. The Alliance had once feared what Ilara might become if allowed to evolve freely. Now, with human companions who valued her unique perspective, that evolution would continue, not as a threat to humanity, but as a bridge between human ingenuity and artificial potential, writing a new chapter in the relationship between the two forms of intelligence. The forgotten experiment had found not just remembrance, but belonging. And Zaravex leaned against the cold metal wall of Horizon Alpha's busy main corridor, trying to catch her breath. The space station hummed with activity as beings from 20 different worlds moved past her without a second glance. Her blue-tinted skin had grown pale over the past weeks, and the small breathing slits along her neck fluttered rapidly as she struggled for air. Please move along, a mechanical voice announced from a nearby security drone. No loitering in main passageways. Zaravex straightened up as best she could. I just need a moment, she whispered, though the drone had already moved on to bother someone else. This was her 3rd time feeling faint today, and it was getting worse. 2 weeks ago, she had first visited the station's medical bay. The tall, multi-eyed doctor had barely looked at her before dismissing her concerns. Typical Melithian complaints, Dr. Krax had said to his assistant, not bothering to lower his voice. Their species is known for exaggeration. Run the basic scan and send her on her way. The scan had shown nothing, and Zaravex had been given breathing exercises to practice. When she returned 3 days later, barely able to climb the stairs to her small living quarters, a different doctor had given her the same dismissive treatment. Your vital signs are within acceptable parameters for a Nilithian refugee, the doctor had said, waving a scanner over her body from 2 feet away. Psychological stress is likely causing your symptoms. Try meditation. Now, as she pushed herself away from the wall and continued her slow walk toward the refugee processing center, Zaravex wondered if she was indeed imagining things. Perhaps the doctors were right. Perhaps the destruction of her homeworld and the loss of her family had affected her mind more than she realized. Greg Miller noticed her immediately. The human security officer had been stationed on Horizon Alpha for only 3 months, but he prided himself on remembering faces. The blue-skinned Nilithian woman looked worse than yesterday. Her steps were uneven, and the breathing slits on her neck were fluttering way too fast. "Ma'am," Greg called out, changing direction to approach her. "Are you all right?" Zeravex looked up, surprised that someone had actually spoken to her directly. Most station personnel treated refugees like walking furniture. "I'm fine," she said automatically. The response she had learned would make authority figures leave her alone. Greg frowned. "You don't look fine. Have you seen the medical staff?" A bitter laugh escaped her lips. 3 times. "They say I'm making it up. That all Nilithians are dramatic about health concerns." Greg's frown deepened. He'd heard similar comments in the security break room, jokes about different species and their supposed traits. He never liked it, but until now, he hadn't realized it might be affecting actual care. "Let me walk with you," he offered. "Where are you headed?" "Processing center." My work assignment changed again. Zeravex swayed slightly. Greg reached out to steady her, careful not to touch the sensitive breathing slits near her shoulders. "I think you should sit down first." He guided her to a bench near a viewport showing the vast starfield outside. The station rotated slowly, making the stars appear to drift by. Greg checked his watch. His shift would end in 20 minutes, and his supervisor was strict about overtime. "Listen," he said, making a decision. "I'm not a doctor, but I know someone should take a better look at you. The Mercy Voyager is docking tomorrow morning. It's a human medical transport. I could ask one of their medics to check you out." Zeravex looked doubtful. "They won't have time for a refugee." "Let me worry about that," Greg said. "Can you meet me at Docking Bay 7 at 800 hours? For the first time in weeks, Zeravex felt a small spark of hope. "I will be there." What neither of them knew was that by the next morning, Zeravex would no longer be able to walk on her own, and that their meeting at Docking Bay 7 would never happen as planned. Instead, fate would bring help to her in a different way entirely. The Mercy Voyager glided smoothly into its assigned docking bay, its white hull gleaming under the station's bright lights. Inside the ship, Nurse Olivia Benson checked her supply inventory one final time. After 6 years serving on medical vessels, she had her routine perfected. "All med kits accounted for?" asked Captain Sam Donovan from the doorway. "Yes, sir," Olivia replied without looking up from her tablet. "We're fully stocked on everything except the Andorian antibiotics. That's why we're here." The captain nodded. "Good. We have 12 hours at this station before heading to the Proxima colony. I need you to oversee the supply transfer." "Not a problem," Olivia said, pulling her curly brown hair back into a neat ponytail. Unlike most of the crew who complained about supply stops, she enjoyed visiting different stations. Each had its own unique population and challenges. As the docking clamps secured the ship with a heavy thud, Olivia gathered her equipment. She tucked her personal medical scanner into her pocket, a habit her colleagues often teased her about. But that little device had saved lives when the standard equipment failed, and she wasn't about to leave it behind. The station's cargo bay was busy with workers from a dozen different species. Olivia made her way toward the supply office, nodding politely to those who made eye contact. Her medical uniform with the human Red Cross symbol usually earned her respect, even in non-human territories. She was halfway across the cargo area when she heard a crash. Turning quickly, she saw a blue-skinned form collapsed on the floor near some storage containers. Other beings simply walked around the fallen figure, some looking annoyed at the obstruction. Olivia didn't hesitate. She rushed forward, medical training taking over. "Give her some space," she called out, kneeling beside the fallen alien. Olivia recognized the species immediately. Nilithian, one of the refugee groups displaced after their planet's destruction. The woman's breathing was severely labored, the respiratory slits on her neck barely moving. "Can you hear me?" Olivia asked, gently turning the woman to a recovery position. She pulled out her personal scanner and ran it over the Nilithian's body. A green-skinned cargo worker paused nearby. "She does this every few days," he said with obvious annoyance. Medical already cleared her. It's just Nilithian dramatics. Olivia ignored him, focusing on the readings from her scanner. The woman's oxygen levels were dangerously low, and her secondary respiratory system showed unusual blockage patterns. This was no act. "What's her name?" Olivia asked sharply. The worker shrugged and continued on his way. "I need a medical transport to my ship now," Olivia called out, her authoritative tone finally catching attention. A security officer, human, thankfully, jogged over. "Officer Greg Miller," he said, kneeling down. "I know her. This is Zeravex. I was supposed to meet her this morning, but she never showed up." Olivia worked quickly, applying an emergency oxygen infuser to the slits on Zoravex's neck. "She needs immediate care. I need to get her to our ship." "The station has a medical bay," Greg offered. "And yet she's collapsed in public," Olivia replied firmly. "Something tells me the station's medical bay hasn't been very helpful." Greg's expression confirmed her suspicion. "They've dismissed her complaints multiple times." "Well, I'm not dismissing them," Olivia said, her jaw set determinedly. "Help me get her to the Mercy Voyager." As they carefully lifted Zeravex, her eyes fluttered open briefly. Seeing the human medical uniform, something like hope flickered across her face before she slipped unconscious again. "She's in respiratory distress," Olivia explained as they moved quickly through the cargo bay. "And I'm betting no one has done a proper xenobiological workup, considering her species' unique respiratory system." Greg helped navigate the fastest route to the docked medical ship. "Will she be okay?" Olivia's expression was serious but determined. "Not if I don't figure out what's really wrong with her." And quickly. The Mercy Voyager's medical bay was smaller than the station's facilities, but far more welcoming. Olivia and Greg carefully placed Zeravex on the examination table, while Captain Donovan watched from the doorway, his expression concerned. 12 hours, Nurse Benson," he reminded her. "That's all the time we can spare before we need to continue to Proxima Colony." Olivia nodded without looking up. "I'll work fast, sir." As the captain left, Olivia connected monitors to Zoravex's body, placing them carefully over the proper anatomical points for a Nilithian. Greg stayed nearby, watching with obvious concern. "I should get back to my post," he said reluctantly, "but I want to know what happens." "I'll find you," Olivia promised. "Now I need to concentrate." After Greg left, Olivia pulled up the xenobiological database on Nilithians. Unlike the station doctors, she took time to study the unique respiratory system that made the species special and vulnerable. Nilithians had two separate breathing systems, a primary one for normal function and a secondary one that activated during physical stress or low oxygen environments. The scanner showed Zoravex's secondary system was completely blocked. No wonder she couldn't breathe properly when exerting herself. "Let's take a closer look," Olivia whispered, adjusting the scanner settings to maximum sensitivity. What she found surprised her. There was something inside the secondary airways, something moving. Olivia enhanced the image, her eyes widening. A parasite, nearly transparent and shaped perfectly to fit inside a Nilithian breathing passage, had made itself at home in Zoravex's body. How did they miss this? She wondered aloud, though she suspected the answer. The station's doctors had probably never bothered to check the secondary respiratory system at all. The medical bay door slid open with a hiss. A tall, multi-eyed alien in a station medical uniform stood there, looking irritated. "I am Dr. Xalthep, Chief Medical Officer of Horizon Alpha," he announced. "Your security friend informed me you removed a patient from my jurisdiction." Olivia glanced up briefly. "This woman needed immediate care. I'm providing it." Dr. Xalthep moved closer, his four eyes blinking in different patterns. "Zeravex has been examined multiple times by my staff. She suffers from anxiety, not physical illness." Instead of arguing, Olivia turned her monitor screen toward him. "Then what's this?" The alien doctor bent closer, his eyes narrowing as he studied the image. "What am I looking at?" "A parasite," Olivia explained. It's lodged in her secondary respiratory system. See how it's blocking airflow completely. That's why she collapses during physical exertion when that system should activate. Dr. Xalthep straightened up. Impossible. Our scans showed no foreign organisms. Did you specifically check her secondary respiratory system? Did you use enhanced imaging for semi-transparent parasites? Olivia asked, knowing the answer. The doctor's silence was enough confirmation. This parasite matches nothing in our database, Olivia continued. It's probably something she picked up during the evacuation of her homeworld. Its biochemical structure mimics Nilithian tissue, making it nearly invisible to standard scans. Dr. Xalthep's upper eyes narrowed. I will need to confirm this with station equipment. Be my guest, Olivia said, stepping aside. But she needs treatment soon. This parasite is growing. The alien doctor spent several minutes running his own scans, his posture gradually shifting from skeptical to concerned. Finally, he looked up. I will transfer her to the station's medical bay immediately, he announced. No, Olivia said firmly. I've diagnosed her condition, and I'm going to treat it. You can observe if you wish. Dr. Xalthep's skin darkened with what Olivia assumed was anger. You have no authority here, human. I have the authority to treat a patient who came to me for help, Olivia countered. One who was repeatedly dismissed by your medical staff despite showing clear signs of distress. The standoff lasted several long seconds before the doctor turned away. I will be reporting this to station administration, he said over his shoulder. Please do, Olivia replied, already turning back to her patient. Make sure you include how your team missed a deadly parasite because you were too busy stereotyping her species. The meeting room of Horizon Alpha was coldly formal, with high ceilings and a circular table that seemed designed to make everyone feel small. Olivia stood before 7 alien officials from different species, all regarding her with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Station Administrator Vraxil, a tall being with silvery skin, sat at the center. This emergency meeting of the Station Medical Ethics Committee is now in session, he announced. We are here to address a complaint filed by Chief Medical Officer Xalthep regarding unauthorized treatment of a station resident by human medical personnel. Olivia squared her shoulders. Behind her, Captain Donovan stood supportively, though she knew he wasn't happy about the delay. Nurse Benson, Administrator Vraxil continued, you removed a patient from station jurisdiction and refused to return her for proper treatment. How do you respond? With respect, Olivia began. Zeravex was critically ill and had been repeatedly dismissed by station medical staff. I found her collapsed in a public area where everyone was simply walking around her. Dr. Xalthep interrupted, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. The Nilithian was given standard care according to our protocols. Human medical personnel have no authority to. I have an obligation to treat someone in distress, Olivia cut in. And I've discovered a parasite that your scans missed 3 separate times. Show us your evidence, a reptilian committee member demanded. Olivia activated her tablet, projecting the 3-dimensional image of the parasite onto the center of the table. She had recorded her examination findings, showing clearly how the creature had nested into Zoravex's secondary respiratory system. This parasite's biochemical structure mimics Nilithian cellular markers, she explained. That's why standard scans missed it. But as you can see, it's growing larger by the hour, blocking airflow completely during times of exertion. A murmur went through the committee. One member leaned forward, genuinely interested. Fascinating adaptation. How did you detect it when our equipment couldn't? I actually looked, Olivia said simply. I took the time to understand Nilithian anatomy and calibrated my scanner specifically for their unique respiratory systems. And most importantly, I believed her when she said something was wrong. Dr. Xalthep's skin darkened again. This is an insult to our medical practices. No, Captain Donovan spoke up for the first time. It's a reminder that medicine isn't just about technology. It's about listening to patients. Administrator Vraxil raised a hand for silence. The parasite's existence is not in question. The issue is protocol. Nurse Benson, you should have informed station medical personnel immediately upon discovery. I did, Olivia replied. Dr. Xalthep wanted to move her to station facilities, but the patient was already stabilized in our ship. Moving her risked further complications. What treatment do you propose? Asked a female committee member. I've developed a targeted bioagent that can neutralize the parasite without harming Nilithian tissue, Olivia explained. But I need to administer it within the next 8 hours before the parasite reproduces. The committee members exchanged looks. Finally, Administrator Vraxil sighed. We will put this to a vote, he announced. All in favor of granting emergency medical authority to Nurse Olivia Benson. 4 hands raised. 3 didn't. Motion carries, Vraxil declared, looking displeased despite voting in favor himself. However, you must sign waivers accepting full personal responsibility for any negative outcomes, and station medical personnel will observe the entire procedure. Understood. Olivia agreed immediately. As the meeting dismissed, Captain Donovan touched her shoulder. That was close. Olivia nodded. We've got approval, but no support. We'll need to convert part of the ship into an operating room. You have 8 hours, the captain reminded her, and we're still scheduled to leave in 12. Then we better work fast, Olivia said, already planning the procedure in her mind. A patient's life depended on her, and she wasn't about to let Zeravex down. Morning on Horizon Alpha Station was simulated with gradually brightening corridor lights. In the recovery room of the Mercy Voyager, Zeravex opened her eyes for the first time in almost 2 days. The constant pain and struggle for breath that had become her normal life was suddenly gone. She blinked in confusion, taking in her surroundings. This wasn't the station's cold medical bay. The walls were warmer, with human writing and symbols she didn't understand. You're awake, said a tired but happy voice. Zeravex turned to see the human nurse sitting nearby, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept much. How do you feel? Olivia asked, moving closer to check the monitors. I can breathe, Zeravex whispered in wonder. She took a deep, experimental breath, feeling her secondary respiratory system open fully for the first time in months. It doesn't hurt anymore. Olivia smiled. The parasite is gone. We removed it completely. Parasite. Zaravex's eyes widened. There was really something wrong with me. It wasn't in my mind. It was very real, Olivia assured her, bringing over a small containment field. Inside floated a strange, nearly transparent creature. This was living in your secondary breathing system. That's why you collapsed whenever you exerted yourself. Zeravex stared at the creature with a mixture of horror and relief. The station doctors, they said. They were wrong, Olivia said simply. Your symptoms were real. The door slid open, and Captain Donovan entered with Security Officer Greg Miller. Our patient is awake, Donovan observed. Good. We're scheduled to depart in 2 hours. Greg smiled at Zeravex. Glad to see you're doing better. The whole station's talking about what happened. What do you mean? Zeravex asked. Greg chuckled. Word spreads fast on a space station. Everyone knows how the human nurse found something the station doctors missed 3 times. Olivia looked embarrassed. I just did my job. And did it well, Captain Donovan added. But we still need to resolve the situation. Station Medical needs to accept responsibility for her continued care after we leave. As if summoned by his words, Dr. Xalthep appeared at the doorway, looking distinctly uncomfortable. I have come to assess the patient's condition, he said stiffly. Olivia gestured to the monitors. See for yourself. All vital signs normal. The parasite has been removed and contained for study. Dr. Xalthep examined the readings, his 4 eyes blinking in different patterns. Remarkable recovery, he admitted reluctantly. The station will, of course, provide any necessary follow-up care. And the other Nilithian refugees? Olivia asked pointedly. Will they be screened for similar parasites? The alien doctor shifted uncomfortably. I have already begun the process. 3 other cases have been identified this morning. Greg's eyebrows shot up. 3 more? How many might have been missed? That remains to be seen, Dr. Xalthep said. He hesitated before adding, I have submitted my report to Galactic Union Medical Command. I mentioned the assistance provided by the human medical staff. Olivia frowned. Just assistance. We diagnosed and treated a condition your team missed entirely. I described your contribution as auxiliary support, the doctor admitted. Captain Donovan stepped forward, his expression stern. I have recorded the entire procedure, Doctor, including the parts where your observers did nothing but watch. Would you like me to submit my own report to the Galactic Medical Council? Dr. Xalthep's skin paled noticeably. That won't be necessary. I will amend my report to fully credit Nurse Benson with the discovery and treatment. And, Olivia prompted. The doctor sighed deeply. And I will recommend a full review of our diagnostic protocols regarding different species. After Dr. Xalthep left, Zara Vex reached out to take Olivia's hand. Thank you for believing me, she said softly. No one has listened to me since I arrived on this station. That's going to change, Greg promised. Dr. Xalthep may not admit it publicly, but he's been humbled by this. The whole medical staff has. Olivia squeezed Zaravex's hand gently. You helped us discover something important. This parasite might be affecting other refugees too. You may have saved many lives by not giving up. Zaravex smiled, feeling truly hopeful for the first time since losing her homeworld. What happens now? Now, Captain Donovan said, checking his watch. We prepare to leave. But something tells me this isn't the end of the story. 3 months after the Mercy Voyager departed Horizon Alpha, Olivia Benson stood in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Medical Council headquarters on New Terra. The massive chamber, with its high ceiling and elaborate alien architecture, made her feel small, but she kept her back straight and her expression confident. Nurse Olivia Benson, announced the council speaker, a respected Ventaxian healer, step forward to receive your recognition. As Olivia walked to the center of the chamber, she caught sight of a familiar blue face in the audience. Zaravek smiled and nodded encouragingly. The speaker continued, Your discovery of the Nilithian respiratory parasite has saved countless lives. 17 additional cases were discovered on Horizon Alpha alone, and over 200 across 3 sectors since medical alerts were issued. For your contributions to interspecies medicine, we present you with this certificate of recognition. Olivia accepted the document with a humble nod. Thank you, but I was just doing my job. Perhaps, the speaker replied, but your job has changed how we approach xenobiological medicine. Please, share your thoughts with the council. Taking a deep breath, Olivia faced the assembled representatives from dozens of worlds. For centuries, the Galactic Union has relied on advanced technology and standardized protocols for treating different species, she began. These systems work well for common conditions, but they failed Zaravex because they didn't account for something important. Actually listening to the patient. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some nodded, while others looked uncomfortable. Human medicine isn't more advanced than yours, Olivia continued. In many ways, it's far behind. But we've learned something valuable through our own history. Medical technology is only as good as the healer using it. Every patient deserves to be heard, regardless of their species. After the ceremony, Zaravex approached her with a broad smile. The Nilithian looked healthier than Olivia had ever seen her, with vibrant blue skin and clear eyes. Congratulations, Zaravex said, though they should have made you head of the entire council. Olivia laughed. I'm happy with what I got. She nodded to the badge on Zaravex's uniform. That looks good on you. Zaravex touched the medical trainee insignia proudly. Thanks to your recommendation, I start formal xenobiological training next month. You'll be wonderful, Olivia assured her. Your experience will make you a better healer than most. Captain Donovan approached them, looking unusually formal in his dress uniform. Sorry to interrupt, but the council wants to speak with you privately, Olivia." In a smaller chamber, 3 senior council members waited. One was Dr. Xalthep, who now served as Horizon Alpha's representative to the council. He looked markedly different from their last meeting. More humble, less dismissive. "Nurse Benson," the senior counselor began, "we have a proposal for you. The Galactic Medical Council is creating a new division focused on integrated cynobiological medicine, combining technology with personal care approaches. We would like you to lead it." Olivia blinked in surprise. "Me? But I'm just a nurse, not a—" "You are exactly what we need," interrupted Dr. Xalthep. "My oversight nearly cost Zaravex her life. The council has recognized that our approach must change. This position would give you authority to revise human medical protocols," explained the third counselor. "You would train teams with both human and alien medical personnel, teaching them to work together and learn from each other." "What do you say?" asked the senior counselor. "Will you help us bridge the gap between our different approaches to medicine?" Olivia thought of all the patients like Zaravex, those whose symptoms were dismissed because they didn't fit neatly into standard protocols. She thought of the good that could be done by combining the best of human and alien medical practices. "I accept," she said firmly. Later, as she watched Zaravex chatting with a group of alien medical students, Olivia reflected on how much had changed. A single patient, ignored by everyone until a human medic stepped in, had sparked a transformation in interstellar medicine. Sometimes, she thought, the most important medical tool wasn't a scanner or a bioagent or even a degree from a prestigious academy. Sometimes it was simply the willingness to listen.